My parents told my brother to take my house since I don't have a family. I'm a solo guy in my early 30s. So my brother is 30 and somehow he's already juggling 4 kids. Can you believe that? He had his first at 20 and then the second came just a year later. So the next 2 years after that, the fourth one just joined us a couple of months back. My relationship with his wife is pretty rocky. She constantly tries to provoke me with her superior attitude. And the moment I push back, she flips the script and plays the victim like it's an Olympic sport. She can break down in tears at the drop of a hat and knows how to put on a really convincing act to win over anyone's sympathy. My family is totally obsessed with her, even though they see her true colors and just don't mind at all. Gotta admit, she's pretty attractive. Honestly, she's just the worst. And there's no way I could ever find her attractive. She just won't get a job, despite having a college degree. And my mom is there helping with the kids all day. So it turns out their whole financial situation hinges on my brother. This basically means they have no choice but to live at my parents' place. Privacy definitely becomes a concern when you have everyone living together in a 3-bedroom house from the 60s. As a kid, it was pretty clear that my younger brother was the favorite. There's a 3-year age gap between us. He totally developed this superiority complex since I faced serious consequences whenever I tried to stand up to his antics back then. It was clear that my parents favored him significantly, as he received the majority of everything unless someone pointed it out. That definitely occurred quite a lot with other family members. That's why my parents decided to pack us all up and relocate about 100 miles away from them. They typically would only visit us during holidays because it was a 3-hour drive. My brother has been physically abusive towards me multiple times. I pursued my first girlfriend so intensely that it ultimately led to our breakup, and she found amusement in my misfortunes. My parents would just say to toughen up whenever I expressed my feelings about it. I only received fair treatment when my parents were concerned about how things looked to others. I have to say it was pretty hilarious to watch their reactions when they had to treat me the same as my brother during birthdays and Christmas, especially with others around. We had some relatives who were super nosy and thrived on all the latest gossip and drama. My parents really tried to keep things under wraps and said they would take all my things if I didn't stay quiet. Honestly, it just made my parents throw a bigger celebration when I hit 17 and moved out, since it meant they were off the hook for supporting me. I moved out before I even finished high school. Honestly, couch surfing was a way better option than staying with them. I've kept things pretty minimal since I moved out. They totally ghosted my high school graduation. Honestly, it just didn't matter to me. After that, I mostly just caught up with my parents and brother during holidays, just like everyone else in the family. The beginning of the 21 pandemic really hit me hard. I just got laid off from my job. I wasn't able to renew the lease on my condo since my roommate lost his job too, and we just couldn't swing the rent on unemployment benefits alone. I had this awesome 2-bedroom condo that I rented and absolutely adored. So my roommate decided to bail early and head back to live with family as our lease was wrapping up. I ended up having to sell almost everything I owned because I was facing homelessness if I didn't drastically downsize. I definitely made a mistake by choosing such an overpriced rental. But I enjoyed living it up. Before that, life really didn't treat me well. I came to the conclusion that I should have chosen a place with a lower cost of living, which would have allowed me to save more for a rainy day. But I totally had a plan. I have a truck because I have always had a passion for them. I came across a $2,000 camper that's in decent condition and decided to throw it on my truck to live in it for a bit. It was meant to be just a short-term thing, but I ended up staying in it way longer than I ever imagined. I initially thought I could stay in the camper at my parents' place, where my brother and his family are still living too. So I asked my parents if I could crash for a bit, and they were like, "Nah, our place is packed. We can't have you here." Also, let's be real, we haven't exactly been best buds over the last 10 years. They told me they'd only allow me to park my camper there if I forked over nearly the same amount as an apartment rental in my area. Wow, that was a serious hassle just to park my camper. I was out of work and doing my best to stretch my unemployment benefits until I landed a new gig. At this point, I might as well just be in an apartment with the kind of rent they're asking for. My parents rang me up in Phoenix and told me to take a hike since we couldn't see eye to eye, and they still found it totally hilarious that I had to live in a camper. My brother joined in, pointing and making fun of me, calling me a homeless bum. I parked my truck and camper in a store parking lot to crash for the night since I didn't have any other options. I was totally freaked out thinking about the possibility of someone trying to break in. Let's just say my sleep was pretty much non-existent that night. I had no other options since my relatives with houses lived too far away and all my friends were just into apartments. I was really attached to my area, so leaving wasn't something I wanted to do. I had my mail sent to a friend's place instead. That was the only option left for me to receive my mail. It was a real struggle to find a decent spot to park. I started searching for a job that resembles my previous one. After months of embracing the nomadic camper lifestyle, during that period I faced quite a bit. I've encountered everything from beggars and drug addicts to folks telling me to leave just because my camper was parked in Phoenix. At one point, someone who told me to move said they were with a HOA. I wasn't even parked on a street where there were any houses around. When I asked about the HOA, they became super aggressive and started making threats. I decided to move my camper just to steer clear of any hassle. I figured out that using a long extension cord to plug in wherever I could was the way to go for keeping my camper batteries charged and ensuring a steady supply of electricity. This involves some stealthy maneuvers, like finding a random building to plug into an outside outlet while parked on the street. I get that it's not the best move, but I really needed to keep my batteries charged to make sure my fridge stayed cold. I had this little solar power bank to keep my phone charged, but I was totally lacking a generator. Generators are loud and need fuel regardless. I took the necessary steps. After months of struggling, I finally landed a new job. I ended up relocating to the nearby city just to land a job that wasn't in retail. I did my time in retail during college and swore I'd never go back. Even though I was on the verge of ditching that promise, I was still receiving unemployment benefits. But I was totally without a stable place to crash while getting it. I really didn't want to buy without a job when that time came. Honestly, I was just sitting there completely uninterested. All I could really do was dive into books, binge watch movies on my tiny portable DVD player, scroll through my phone or laptop, and jot down the best parking spots and nearby public restrooms. I'm a bit jealous that the Japanese get to enjoy public bathhouses. We could definitely use some of that around here. When I finally scored a new job, I basically set up camp in the back lot of the building, hanging out in those old employee parking spots that nobody else seemed to care about. They were so far back that the whole area felt like it was lost to time. My boss, who owns the company, was totally on board with this setup since I was always ready to pick up any shift I could manage, as long as I got enough rest. He actually let me take the camper off my truck and set it up in one of the spots, so I could cruise around without it. Pretty chill, right? I'm not entirely convinced this was above board, but we didn't get any complaints. During my time living there, I hardly encountered any trespassers. A couple of them showed up, but the security guards kicked them out pretty quickly. I was basically on standby all the time when they reached out, and I was grinding nearly every day of the week. So my boss totally hooked me up by letting me plug my camper into the building for power and water. I just had to pay a little rent by working for free on Sundays, when the office was pretty much empty. Just me, the janitor, and the security guard hanging out. Honestly, I often found myself showering at a buddy's place or hitting up the gym since my camper was lacking a shower. It only had a portable toilet, and I really didn't want to deal with the hassle of emptying it, so I made the most of other bathrooms whenever possible. I had access to the warehouse, so I could pop in and use the bathroom whenever I needed to. I was on a first-name basis with the night security guard. No big deal. He's turned into one of my best buddies. Heating the camper in winter was a breeze with just a small electric heater. Summers were pretty rough, to be honest. The camper was lacking AC, so I ended up grabbing a used portable air conditioner to make things a bit more tolerable. I racked up a ton of overtime pay and picked up some new skills from my coworkers along the way. So, halfway through this year, I scored a promotion to supervisor at my company, and now I'm earning a way better salary than I did before. That's when I realized I was ready to own a home. The panic I felt from almost losing my condo hit hard and made me see that I really needed something way more secure for the future. I checked out options near my workplace and stumbled upon a 3-bedroom manufactured home just 2 miles away, sitting on a little piece of land. Somehow I ended up snagging it for $10K under the asking price. I pretty much drained my savings for the down payment, But hey, I got approved for a home loan. I finally escaped the camper life. I had plenty of room to back my truck in behind the house, so I could take the camper off and set it up in the backyard. I decided to keep it as a separate little structure, just in case I want to use it again later. Once I was all settled in the house, I made the mistake of boasting about it on my social media. My family checked out the post, and that's where things really get interesting. So out of nowhere, my parents and my brother, plus his family, decided to drop by and check out my place. No heads up or anything. I didn't even share my address with them. I still can't figure out how they discovered my address. None of my friends have come clean, and no family members have dropped by before that. I'm starting to think they might have been watching me at work and then trailed me home or something like that. I wouldn't be shocked at all. As soon as I swung the door open, they all barged in like overexcited tourists on a mission. Then they just began to settle in like they owned the place. Everyone kept snooping around, and Lisa had this unsettling grin that she kept throwing my way. It wasn't until later that I pieced it all together. It made me angrier than a bull on steroids that just got stung by a hornet. My parents keep bringing up how I have all this extra space now, and honestly, it's overwhelming for someone like me who doesn't have a partner or children. My brother wouldn't stop pointing out how much more space there was compared to our parents' place. Plus, my place was nearer to where he worked. There are definitely warning signs everywhere, I get it. So my brother finally pulled me aside for a private chat. Out of nowhere, everyone bolted from the room and crowded onto the front porch. That's when it hit me that they had something up their sleeves. My brother thinks I can't handle the house all by myself. So I guess I should just let him crash with his family since his wife is expecting their fourth kid, huh? Plus, my place is way nearer to where he works. He mentioned that since I already have the camper, I could just stay in that outside while they occupy the main house. Just to clarify, Mark never mentioned anything about offering rent at any point. Just saying he's got a solid gig. He began discussing the upcoming changes. And even curfews, huh? I couldn't just stroll in whenever I wanted without giving a heads up first. If it wasn't my brother, I'd seriously question the sanity of the person I was chatting with. But Mark totally lost it ages ago because our parents always acted like he was the main character in the story. I attempted to share my thoughts, but he just kept interrupting me like my opinion didn't even count. Absolutely no chance I would ever consider renting my house or any part of it to him. Maybe others, just to make it easier to pay off the mortgage, but definitely not him or his unpleasant spouse. I've come across this exact kind of scenario in videos online a ton of times. I never really believed I'd actually experience it. It just seemed too ridiculous to be true. Honestly, my parents, brother, and Lisa totally check all the boxes for being a group of narcissistic, entitled crazies. I grabbed my phone and told it to start recording, so I just kept it close. It was like Mark was totally oblivious to what I had done. He just sat there flailing his arms, going on and on about all the reasons he needed my house. Then he went from saying that to acting like it was already settled and trying to extend his hand for a handshake. That's when I finally stood my ground and said absolutely not. And I totally said it loud enough that Mark actually stumbled backward for a moment. I hardly ever yelled at him like that because our parents would always punish me for it. This was my place, not theirs. My spine can totally shine however it wants in this space. I got up and made it clear that my house wasn't available for anyone. Just pretending that I'm going to let him move in because they want it isn't going to change anything. I purchased my home for myself. Honestly, it's not on me that he keeps popping out more kids and still has to crash with our parents because he can't make enough to get his own place. Mark leaned in really close, almost invading my personal space, and told me I didn't deserve the house. He was on the hunt for a more suitable home for his family. I just couldn't help but laugh right in his face and told him that was complete nonsense because I put in a lot of effort to buy my house. Absolutely, I totally earned that. Mark began shouting that I don't have a wife or kids, so I shouldn't need all this space. I might as well just hand it over to him. I told him I'm not giving him anything, and he didn't even bother to offer me any rent money. If I let him move in, I'd be stuck paying the whole mortgage on my own place while not even getting to enjoy living there myself. So Mark goes on about how he shouldn't be responsible for rent since, family takes priority for him. And our parents said I was going to do this and I totally will. I shouted like their word was the ultimate authority, telling Mark that he had no right or power to take my house from me. Just as I was about to respond, my parents and Lisa stormed back in through the front door, closing in on me to pressure me into agreeing. There was a ton of bickering going on. To wrap it up, from here on out, I kept hearing the phrase, "just do it for Mark," way more times than I can count. During the argument, I made it clear that they have no authority over my life or my home, and to make my exit before I had to involve the authorities. Lisa totally freaked out on me, yelling about how she was pregnant again. I just can't put her through this. I told her I didn't do anything to her. She thought she could just keep taking from me as if I would let it happen without a fight. I wasn't bound to her or her family in any way. I told her she was a stuck-up person who never showed me any respect. I really couldn't care less about her opinions or the number of kids she has. I really don't feel any sympathy for her. She's definitely not going to be staying at my place. Well, that definitely pushed her buttons and got her to come at me. She landed a solid punch on my face and went for another one. But my brother was holding her back, and she was kicking and screaming. She wouldn't stop insisting that he release her so she could come after me. The phone I had captured just about everything. I raised it up and warned them that I'd call the cops if they didn't get out of there immediately. So my parents dropped the news on Mark that they were heading out. So my mom was like, "I've got a week for you to figure things out." I let her know that I won't be around and that she shouldn't return. So I let Lisa know that my phone captured it all. If she pulls any stunts, I'm definitely going to file charges for assault. She totally lost it and then bolted out, sobbing with her face buried in her hands. My mom was the last to leave and told me I better do this for Mark and Lisa. I replied that I won't be doing that, continuing with the next chapter of the tale. After I kicked my parents, brother, and Lisa out for trying to pressure me into giving my new house to my brother, I quickly took to social media to share the whole story with the family. It went viral really quickly. Unfortunately, it's all gone now since it was deleted a while back, and I've set my profile to private. I shared my experience because I was certain that my family would come home and try to spin the situation to paint me as the bad guy. I totally called it. But I had roughly an hour to kick things off before they showed up. I even had video proof to support my account of what they had done. Being proactive totally paid off since I managed to rally quite a few family members to my side from the get-go. It seems like my parents, brother, and Lisa were totally ready to craft their own post. But it was already too late. They didn't even put in the effort to cover it up. My folks, Mark and Lisa, had a couple of flying monkeys backing them up. But that's about it. Many others were fully aware of their own entitlement. What went down was something they all grasped and rolled with pretty fast. One individual reached out to me specifically. I have no idea who those people were. They went off on me, calling me a terrible brother. I had to step aside for someone who truly embodies what it means to be a family man. I just wrapped up the call and decided to block the number. This didn't happen again. This week just flew by, So my parents actually showed up with Mark at my front porch, just like they promised in their earlier ultimatum. They were ringing my doorbell nonstop and banging on the door until I finally decided to answer. I barely opened it, and they attempted to push their way in once more. However, I had put in a couple of latch chains that stopped it from happening, and I even pressed my body against the door just to be safe. My dad and bro insisted I open the door for them, but I mentioned that I was capturing everything on video, and I would definitely call the cops if they attempted to break in again. My mom totally diffused the situation, and then in her overly sugary voice, she asked me if I was ready to let my brother move in. I told her and the others to just leave and not return. My mom started with the waterworks and questioned why I can't just do this for Mark, since he's my dear brother. I chuckled and then straight up stated that I don't see him as a brother since he's treated me poorly for years, and they totally pushed him to go for it. They really don't know how to parent properly. Honestly, he's just the worst brother ever, so it told them to get lost or I'd be dialing the cops right away. They all bounced out surprisingly quick, besides my mom's wailing and the glares from everyone else. It's almost like getting them to leave was way too simple, right? I really believed that the entire situation had come to a close. I suppose I should have given them more weight, because they came up with some really dumb ideas. So I rolled up to my place that Friday evening, and guess what? There's a moving truck right next to my brother's minivan, just chilling in my driveway. Mark and his family were there, unloading their stuff. He just gave me a wave with that smug grin when I spotted him. I was absolutely livid and made it clear to him and his whole family that they needed to cut it out. Yet they still had the audacity to tell me, whether I liked it or not, that they were moving in. Then, in the most exaggerated manner, tilting her head and puckering her lips, she claimed it was fine, because my mom said it was cool. And I guess I should totally take my mom's advice, right? I was filled with fury just hearing those words and seeing her self-satisfied, annoying expression. I ended up locking myself in my truck to call the cops immediately. As soon as they figured out what I was up to, Lisa began banging on my window and shouting at me to cut it out. I just can't go through with this because she and Mark really need the house. And she cried, "Why can't you just do this for Mark?" I replied with, "Screw Mark. This is my house, and I have every right to say so, definitely not his." She straight up threatened to key my truck if I didn't quit calling the cops. The 911 operator caught all of that because the window was just a bit ajar. I let Lisa know that if she messed up my truck, I'd take legal action against her, and she had the smarts to back off. So the cops showed up, and Mark and Lisa, along with their kids, had totally locked themselves inside my place. I explained the situation to the police and also showed them my new driver's license, which had my current address on it. So when we got to my front door, I noticed they had swapped out the lock. The old lock was just sitting in on the porch, with its center completely drilled out, and the drill they had was just sitting right next to it, along with a full set of Home Depot drill bits. I mentioned the busted lock and drill, so I filled the cops in on everything that went down before that. So it looks like Mark must have called our parents after I got home. They just had to show up while I was chatting with the cops. My parents straight up lied and claimed that I had agreed to let my brother and his family rent my house. I pointed out that was a straightforwardly debunkable falsehood, no matter how you look at it. So Mark and Lisa finally emerged from my place, papers in hand. They both had this ridiculously smug look, as if they thought they had totally outsmarted me. They went ahead and created a counterfeit rental agreement, complete with printing. However, my signature was missing from it. There was one, but it totally didn't resemble my handwriting at all. I doubt any of them have actually laid eyes on my signature. That was just plain dumb on their end. I told my parents and Mark that was just ridiculously obvious fraud. If the police looked into it, they'd totally uncover that pretty quickly. I really doubt that facing jail time and court proceedings would benefit them in any way. This situation could seriously jeopardize Mark's job, which is his sole source of income for supporting his family. I mentioned that I would hire a lawyer and pursue legal action for any lost, stolen, or damaged property of mine. And I'd definitely reach out to CPS just to be safe. Mark turned pale and had a genuinely frightened expression when I said all that. But my mom really stepped in and insisted that I should just go along with this for Mark and live in the camper, so they can finally have their own family space. I shouted at her that if she believed it was such a brilliant plan, she could go ahead and do it for Mark herself, letting him have the place all to himself instead. The officers pulled my mom away from me, and I made it clear that I wanted them to leave immediately, or I would take legal action. I mentioned in a post that they had drilled out my front door lock to get inside. The lease documents were clearly counterfeit. They totally botched my signature, and I've got video evidence of Lisa assaulting me. I could really mess up their lives with those felonies if I chose to. If they stuck around, that's precisely what I'd go ahead and do. The only reason I hadn't done it yet was because of Mark's kids. They've got one shot to make a break for it. When my parents caught wind of that, it seemed to finally dawn on them that they couldn't make me go through with it for Mark. My mom finally gave in and said she'd wrap this up. After that, she approached Lisa and had a brief, hushed conversation with her while my father chatted with Mark. Lisa immediately burst into tears, shredding the fake rental papers into tiny pieces and throwing them around like confetti. An officer then stepped in, telling them to clean up the mess or face a citation for littering. At this point, both cops were wearing expressions that clearly said, "I don't get paid enough for this." Mark finally had to break the news to his kids that it was time to load their things back into the moving truck. The kids were in tears, and the oldest was wailing about how he wouldn't have his own room anymore. Lisa and Mark rounded up their kids for one final, desperate effort to tug at my heartstrings with their sad family act. I honestly feel like they totally rehearsed that ahead of time. Every kid had that same desperate expression, their mouths trembling with emotion. Lisa was constantly rubbing her pregnant belly, tilting her head to give off that sad puppy vibe, while my brother put on the most heart-wrenching expression he could muster and pleaded, "Please don't do this. And we got to find a way to make this place work for us." But I stood my ground and told them to keep packing. Everyone, including Lisa, cranked the crying to maximum volume. And Mark shouted at me, "Are you happy with what you've done? You've turned your back on us, refusing to lend a hand or share what could have been a home for family." I found myself laughing uncontrollably and firing back that what he was attempting was more about taking than sharing. And no amount of tears will change my mind about letting his family move in because he's not my brother anymore. He's just a spoiled jerk who believes he can grab whatever he wants from me, just like back in the day. Mark was dropping F-bombs left and right until the cops stepped in and told him to chill out or he'd end up in cuffs, no matter if I wanted to press charges or not. He drew in his lips, wearing an expression that was a blend of fear and intense anger. I asked the officers if they could hang out until my parents, brother, and Lisa had all taken off. They made it clear that they weren't planning to leave until this situation was sorted out. Actually, within just a few minutes, the two officers turned into four as more arrived for some unknown reason. That definitely pushed my parents to finally take action. I got Mark to hand over the keys to the new lock he installed on my front door. He was super hesitant to give them up. So instead of just giving them to me, he literally tossed them down the street and into a storm drain, telling me to go fetch them myself. But one of the officers totally called him out for that and made him go fetch them. He had to yank the grate off just to reach them, and he ended up getting quite messy along the way. When he finally handed the keys back, he just muttered something under his breath and then dropped them into my palm with a thud. I straight up told him to get lost and not to return. My mom said I'd be cut off for this, like that was supposed to scare me. I shared that with them. So in a totally sarcastic way, I was like, "Oh no, looks like I'll be missing out on the holidays with you all, where I usually get treated poorly anyway." Clearly, Mark has always been your go-to choice. You treated me so poorly while I was growing up that if Mark ever needs an organ donor, I wouldn't help him at all. Just do what you always said I should do when I was treated poorly by everyone, and tough it out. My parents were totally shocked when I dropped that bombshell. The four officers were definitely giving off some serious judgmental vibes towards them. Honestly, if you really want to call out awful parents like mine, just do it in front of the police, because they probably won't do anything too reckless after that. My mom just broke down and walked off. My dad just stood there, and it felt like he was ready to throw a punch. And Mark just stood there, holding his kids, feeling the weight of it all. So Lisa was out there throwing a fit right on my front lawn. Before long, they all lined up, passing out boxes and clearing their things out of my place. Everything was still in boxes, untouched. Everything got cleared out in no time. Yet throughout the process, my mom kept insisting that it wasn't too late. And I could totally pull it off for Mark multiple times. Every time they keep pushing harder and harder, hoping to sway my decision. She mentioned that Mark might cover my rent if I allowed them to stay. So when that plan fell through, she offered me the chance to move back in with them, allowing Mark to rent my place so I could avoid sharing the building. I told her to be quiet and just focus on packing boxes since I really don't want Mark or his family here. I have no interest in his money, and there's no way I'm going back to live with him or my parents after how they treated me during my childhood. Striking a bargain with my parents feels like entering a pact with the devil, honestly. Lisa totally lost it again after that, tossing a box aside and plopping down on the ground for a full-on pity party because she was dreading the idea of moving back in with my parents. She just sat there looking both angry and sad until everyone else wrapped up. She was totally not feeling it when it was time to bounce. They managed to get all the stuff out of the house and load it into the truck. Before they headed out, I really let my parents have it one last time about all the crap they put me through while I was growing up. And with four officers right there, they really couldn't do much other than just stand there and take it for once. I pointed out a ton of stuff that went down. And they even highlighted how they couldn't just do something nice for me. It was really generous of them to let me crash with my camper when I was down on my luck and working to get back on my feet. It's wild how Mark and Lisa were allowed to mock me and label me a bum. So who's the loser now? They were trying to boot me from my own place just so Mark could crash there without paying a dime. But when I was in a tough spot, they tried to charge me way more than I could handle just to park my camper, even though they knew I was unemployed. The cops shot me some seriously judgmental looks after I said all of that. I confronted my parents again and asked them what I did, aside from just being born, to warrant such poor treatment. It's like every time I start to get a little ahead, they're right there trying to take it all back for their golden child. It feels like they'd prefer I just hand everything over to Mark and end up with nothing for myself. I purchased my home with the money I made myself. I had no obligations to them. I'm done asking them for anything, that's for sure. It's obvious that I'll always just be seen as a doormat or a source of money to them. I didn't get any responses from them. They were just standing there, totally out of their element. I kept going off and questioned what on earth led them to believe they were such great parents after everything that happened. My dad was totally crimson, but it was more from feeling embarrassed than actually being mad this time. My mom was in tears, feeling like she was the worst person ever. I straight up admitted that she's a terrible person. They're all in the same boat, and I have a feeling they'll face some serious consequences for it as well. They were terrible individuals, and they were all aware of it. But if I had confronted them about all this in private rather than in public, they would have just gotten angry with me and continued to act like I was the one at fault. They've been in denial for so long that it's basically woven into their identity now. My mom totally lost it and buried her face in my dad's jacket, just crying her heart out. My dad looked more defeated than I've ever seen him before. Mark and his family completely ignored me while they wrapped up loading the moving truck. I double-checked to ensure that none of my stuff was taken. I haven't really had the opportunity to pick up much furniture so far. Everyone hopped back into their rides. Lisa just glared at me with pure malice until my brother finally convinced her to drive the minivan back home. Once they all left, I jumped back online and shared everything that went down. My parents couldn't even muster the courage to defend themselves this time around. And although the family had some divisions prior to this event, it now felt like a total victory for me. Most of the family is totally on my side after what happened, and those who haven't just aren't picking a side. Despite all the times my parents used the "we did it for Mark" excuse, nobody's buying it anymore. Looks like any last bit of family support they had is totally out the window now. Surprisingly, a lot of family members I thought wouldn't back me up actually did. That also covers the old flying monkeys. Looks like they've reached their limit, so I decided to invite half the family over to my new place for Christmas Eve this year. So my parents didn't get an invite. Surprisingly, I found out that I wasn't blocked on my brother and Lisa's profiles. I noticed that Lisa welcomed her fourth baby in early November. They're still crashing at my folks' place. I'm convinced they were aware of my presence. Lisa just couldn't help but drop those passive-aggressive posts every few weeks about feeling cramped living with my parents. Maybe she's just trying to see if she can still pull that guilt trip on me. I'm pretty sure my parents are losing their minds over this. They can't catch a break in their golden years with 3 wild and noisy kids around. We've got a mentally unstable Lisa, my golden child brother, and a newborn baby all under one roof. What a wild ride. Maybe they should just set up a camper in their backyard and let Mark have the whole house to himself. Looks like they could finally catch a break. Totally, that would be a solid move for Mark. Here's the third installment of the tale. To all the people who keep insisting that I should have just let my brother and Lisa take a break, claiming the only reason I didn't was because they're parents. Their children rely on them. If Mark got arrested, he'd probably end up losing his job. Without that, his family is left with no financial support. And Lisa has a baby that's only a few months old right now. There's no reason for either of them to face jail time. But you don't need prison for payback. Sure, the police can definitely assist with that, but I got my revenge without involving the authorities. Am I capable of showing this kind of mercy again? Probably not. They totally get it. I figured I'd hold off on creating an account and posting until after the new year, just in case anything else came up. And it actually happened. As those who have followed my story are aware, my Lisa has been posting passive-aggressive content on social media that clearly targets me, especially after Lisa welcomed her fourth little one in November. She kept spamming the same tired drivel repeatedly. She basically just came up with some not-so-original ways to say it differently. She just kept going on and on about how she was fed up with living with my parents. There's just not enough room. She definitely deserves her own place. Yada, yada, yada. I get that I might come off as dismissive, but experience what I have with these folks, and you'd be all set to mockingly play tiny violins in front of them as well. They're seriously that bad. And of course, since I decided to wait until January to create an account, a lot more unfolded just as I expected. I mentioned earlier that I had invited a good portion of the family over for a Christmas Eve gathering at my place, and everyone I invited actually showed up. So it was like a solid 3 to 4 hour drive for them, you know? They really wanted to come out and back me up. I received a ton of compliments from them about the effort I put into buying a house by myself, and they expressed their regret for everything I had experienced. I got asked why I didn't just hop in my camper and make the 3-hour drive back to them, rather than being essentially homeless for an extended period. I had to awkwardly confess that I was pretty attached to living in this area. I've found my best job prospects in this area. There aren't many solid job options in my field in my hometown, if there are any at all. I really wanted to carve out my own path as much as possible. They pretty much went along with it. We ended up having a pretty awesome party. It was the best I had experienced in years. Some family members even showed up with CDs of awesome Christmas albums. Honestly, the one my uncle brought of Ray Charles was definitely my favorite. His Christmas songs hit differently than anything else I've come across. It was an epic and joyful moment. For once, it felt like I could finally let go of my past problems and just soak in the present. However, I wouldn't be sharing this if things had remained unchanged. So like 2 hours into the party, guess who decided to make an entrance? My parents, brother, and sister-in-law dropped by, all trying to put on their best smiles. They just barged in without even knocking. Just strolled right through my front door like they owned the place. I cut the music and told them to get out right away. They pleaded to remain and claimed they had brought offerings. Before I could say anything else, one of my uncles jumped up and shouted at them. He claimed they have no right to be in my home or my life after the nonsense they tried to pull months ago, and he had the support of a bunch of other family members. Just to clarify, this dude happens to be my uncle. He was totally into her until he discovered all the drama that unfolded between me and my folks. My grandparents, despite their age, quickly stepped in and told my parents that if they wanted to reconcile with me, it was way too early for that. Honestly, the level of disappointment this past year has reached new heights. They managed to keep their favoritism for my brother under wraps for quite a while, but everyone saw through it now. If they ever want to be part of my life again, they really need to step up and treat me like a son for once. Then they looked at Mark and Sil, saying they've noticed the same old stuff Sil keeps putting out there. They're over it, and it's time to move on. My place is not going to be their new digs. Sil reverted to her usual routine of tears, throwing herself a pity party about how she deserves to be the one living here instead of me. She'd just drop into a chair and throw a fit, claiming it wasn't fair that I have this whole house to myself, while she has no family of her own and 4 kids who need more room. She was just looking for a better place to call home and to truly embrace her role as a mom. I realize now that it was kind of childish on my part. I made it clear that she's not a great mother since she relies on my mom for most of the parenting while she just lounges around drinking, scrolling on her phone, or going out and blowing all of Mark's cash. And she really has the audacity to whine about it. I even joked that I'm amazed her baby isn't getting tipsy from her breast milk, considering how much she drinks. I'll admit, I might have crossed a line there since I got some serious stares, and Sil straight up asked if I was calling her bad mom. The facts are clear, and if she hopes to eventually leave my parents' house, she really needs to start utilizing her college degree, find a mom, and figure out how to save some cash. My mom is already handling most of the childcare for my brother's kids, so once her baby gets a bit older, she'll definitely have enough time on her hands. So my brother's oldest kid, who's 6, came charging at me, kicking and screaming because I yelled at his mom. He just wouldn't stop bringing up how his mom claimed I was the villain who made her cry and wouldn't let them stay here. That's when my brother yanked his kid back to safety. However, the rest of the family quickly got involved again. So it kind of escalated into a family intervention aimed at my sister-in-law, and brother. She was in tears. The baby she just had was wailing. The kids were in tears. Man, even Mark was on the verge of tears from the brutal verbal beatdown he was taking. He just plopped down on the ottoman where I stashed my shoes by the front door, looking like a total mess. He just couldn't meet anyone's gaze. He couldn't even manage to say a couple of words to me, not with an entire house full of people just waiting to pounce on him if he dared to unleash his inner golden child once more, if they hadn't been around to obstruct him. I have a feeling this would have turned into a déjà vu situation, just like when he attempted to boss me around to take my house a few months back. At this stage, he had been so utterly embarrassed that both his and my parents' standing in the family was totally wrecked since all the facades had come crashing down. Not long after, my parents, brother, and Sil all walked away in disappointment. The party picked back up, and we all steered clear of discussing what had just gone down for the remainder of the night. Given that a lot of the adults had been drinking, they all ended up crashing at my place for the night. I even let a few of them crash in the camper to make sure there was enough room. I have to say, it really works well as a guest house too. All my relatives were eager to check it out earlier too. They were totally shocked that I had been living in it for about 2 years. I have so many questions about this, just reminiscing about how summer and winter felt and all that jazz. I woke up before anyone else on Christmas morning. They had a fresh pot of coffee ready, along with some ibuprofen for those who were dealing with the aftermath of spiked eggnog hangovers. I got told I'm a way better host than my parents ever were, so we all decided to make this a yearly tradition for next Christmas. After Christmas, Sil finally stopped posting things that were clearly aimed at me and even removed all the old ones too. But not long after the new year, she posted again, venting about how she had tried to persuade my parents to get a camper just like mine. It could totally be set up in the backyard, allowing Mark and his family to enjoy the entire house as their family home. Getting a dose of your own medicine isn't exactly a good time, so apparently my parents shot that idea down pretty hard. There's no way anyone is going to force them out of their own space, especially not their master bedroom. The post lasted just a couple of days before Sil took it down. It's been ages since she last posted anything. She really enjoys venting her frustrations. But if a tree falls and no one is there to hear it, does it even have the right to complain? It seems like Sil has come to the conclusion that there's little reason to continue when no one is listening to her anymore. Mark is really struggling to make ends meet with his salary, so moving his family out isn't going to happen anytime soon. If they happen to have another kid in the coming years, I wouldn't be shocked at all. Things have chilled out for me since then. I've even had some friends over for a poker night. I totally struggle with poker since I can't seem to remember anything about it at all. Who cares? We get to enjoy some brews and indulge in tasty snacks while having a blast like total goofballs. We all piled on Whoppers from Burger King and went all out in the best way 4 guys can when they're just looking to have a blast and get completely wasted. I'm thinking that maybe this summer I'll consider the idea of dating someone. Time isn't exactly on my side anymore. Hoping for the best on that one, my camper is just collecting dust in the yard these days. And I admit, there were some days I went out there just to spend time in it. I did live in it for 2 years. It feels like my other home. Who knows, maybe someday I'll finally get to take it out for a camping trip. It feels like it was destined to happen. I've never gone camping before. My parents thought it was a total waste of time. It's going to be a totally fresh experience for me.